welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and today we are going to be doing a very fun video that I actually got the idea to do on TikTok, and it's basically an excuse for me to talk about more books that I loved that happened to not make my top 22 of 2022. But it's basically, I picked a whole bunch of tropes, and I'm going to tell you my favorite book that I read in 2022 for each of those tropes. Like I said, it's just an excuse for me to talk about more books that I loved from 2022, and we are going to get right into it. So the first trope that I chose was fake dating. So I read a lot of fake dating books in 2022, so this was really hard. But this book that I'm going to talk about is probably one of my favorite fake dating books that I've read now, and that is Faking Miss Right by Claire Kingsley. So this book is a boss assistant romance, and it is about a hero who is a billionaire, and he is going to this gala, and he shows up at this gala, and his father is there, and his father introduces him to his new girlfriend. And unfortunately, the father's new girlfriend is actually the hero's ex-girlfriend, who is with the father for money reasons. She's like a gold digger. And the father is going through a really hard time, and so the hero is like, I don't want to hurt him more by telling him, one, that she's my ex-girlfriend, and two, that she's only with him for his money. And so he's like, to save face, is like, oh, I have a girlfriend. And he calls up his assistant and is like, hey, I need you to dress really nice and get down to this gala that I'm at. And the assistant shows up in a really pretty dress, and she's like, what am I here for? And he brings her over to his dad and is like, hey dad, this is my new girlfriend. And the assistant is like, what in the actual fuck is happening right now? But she rolls with it, and it's great, and I loved it. But then after that, it gets even more intense with the fake dating aspect, because they also end up with a forced proximity aspect when they end up having to move in together to like prove that they're dating. And the heroine ends up having to move in, share a bed, fake date for like the whole day, at work, at home, because his father is moving in with the hero. And it's like a whole situation of constant fake dating, forced proximity, boss assistant, absolute hilarious shenanigans. I loved it. The hero is like a very closed off hero, and he doesn't like to let people see his like inside self. He's very different on the inside than what he presents to the outside. But after spending so much time together, he's basically kind of forced to let the heroine in, and she gets to see him for who he actually is and how sweet he actually is, rather than this like hardcore billionaire boss that she works with on a daily basis. And I was obsessed with this. I loved it so much, and I had to talk about it, but it didn't make my top 22 of 2022, so I was like, this is the perfect way to talk about it. Then the next trope that I chose was sports romance, and so I read a lot of good sports romances. So for this list, I also chose ones that did not end up on my top 22 of 2022. That was the whole point of this video. So obviously, Blindside by Candy Steiner is one of my favorite sports romances that I read this year, but that's on my top 22 of 2022, so it's not in this video. So a sports romance that I absolutely loved that did not end up on my top 22 of 2022 is The Long Game by Rachel Reed. This is the very long-awaited follow-up story for Ilya and Shane from Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. I read Heated Rivalry a long time ago, multiple years ago. I think I read it in like 2020, and I was in love with that book. I gave it 5 stars. It's a absolutely amazing rivals to lovers romance that takes place over years, and they're both hockey players and they're on different teams, and they've basically had this like built up rivalry by all the fans for a really long time. They joined the league at the same time. They have constantly been battling it out for different like awards and things, and so this like big rivalry has come up around them, and they end up one day when they're in the same city, when their teams were playing against each other, hooking up, and then they continue hooking up whenever they're in the same space, and this takes place over year-long stretches, and then they finally, the book Heated Rivalry ends on a happy for now. But a lot of fans, including me, were very much like, we want a HEA for Shane and Ilya, and Rachel Reed finally wrote one, and that is what The Long Game is. So I can't tell you a lot about what happens in The Long Game because you do need to read Heated Rivalry first, but I loved it. I loved being back with Ilya and Shane. I loved getting their full HEA. They're so perfect together, and I am just utterly obsessed with them and their romance. The way that Rachel Reed writes her hockey romances really works for me. There is a lot of hockey in them, which I really appreciate because I really like having that hockey, and having both characters be hockey players, having them be on different teams is so interesting to me. Having to see like how the different teams react to them being together and finding out that they've been together for so freaking long, because The Long Game takes place multiple years after the end of Heated Rivalry. So I'm such a big fan of this. I had an absolutely amazing time. Rachel Reed truly delivered on the HEA for Shane and Ilya, and I loved it. Then the next one that I have is workplace romance, and for this one I had to go with By a Thread by Lucy Score. Okay, so I do actually have a physical copy of this one, so I just grabbed it. This book is chunky. Lucy Score's books are long. Know that going into them. I really, really love this book, and I actually listened to the audiobook, and I did not realize how long it was while I was actually reading it. It's the way that Lucy Score writes. They don't feel overly long, but yes, every single one of her books is long. Just be prepared for that. Know that that is her writing style. It's long. I adored this book. This is a romance where a hero, his name is Dominic, and he's kind of an ass. He's a spoiled brat. He has grown up in a very wealthy family, and he has now just recently taken over for his shitty father as the art director of this magazine that his family owns. And he, like I said, is kind of a spoiled brat, and he is going out to eat with his mother one day when he is on the phone in the middle of this restaurant, and the heroine is the waitress, and she very politely is like, "Excuse me, sir, we have a policy, please no calling on the phone. If you need to finish your phone call, can you just step outside?" And the hero is such a dick to her, and he's so awful, and he refuses, and he's just an absolute asshole, and they get into this like sass battle because the heroine does not take shit from anyone, and she fully is able to like dish it back to him, all this like sass and everything. And unfortunately, the hero ends up getting the heroine fired from her waitressing job. But as she's leaving, the hero's mother runs after her and gives her a business card and is like, "Hey, come to my office tomorrow and I want to give you a job." And the heroine, now being fired from her job, she has money troubles and she really, really needs this job, and so she shows up at the place where the hero's mom told her to go, and the heroine is hired by the hero's mom to be the hero's assistant, but the stipulation is that the hero cannot fire her. She is being hired by the mother, and the hero cannot pull rank on the heroine basically, and is like, "You are his assistant, you need to like basically like help him out, but also don't take any of his crap. He can't fire you. Don't let him just like boss you around." And I really, really loved it because the heroine is so sassy and the hero is so spoiled that they definitely have this full sparring match going. They have so much great banter that I loved. They don't like each other, but they have great banter. And so the hero is so frustrated by the heroine, one, because she doesn't take any of his shit, and two, because he's attracted to her and he doesn't want to be. And he is so angry about the fact that he's attracted to her, and it's hilarious how much he struggles with the fact that he's attracted to her. And they end up in a really, really amazing romance that I loved so much. The heroine has a lot going on in her life. She's struggling a lot. She has a lot of money troubles, and the hero realizes all this stuff that's going on. He becomes so sweet and so determined to help her, and I loved this romance. I loved this romance, and I had to talk about it. So my favorite workplace romance, so freaking good. Okay, so then the next one that I have is enemies to lovers trope. So for this one, the one that I had to go with, this was the perfect one that I thought of immediately when I thought of this trope, is 5 Rounds by Nikki Castle. This is a MMA romance. This is actually Nikki Castle's debut, and it blew me away. She is an absolutely amazing writer, and this was so well done. And the enemies to lovers of this romance I actually really liked, because I think that a lot of times now authors will write enemies to lovers as one of the tropes on it, or like try and write in an enemies to lovers story into their already written story, because they know how popular the enemies to lovers trope is, and so a lot of books that say they're enemies to lovers aren't. But this one, I actually felt that they didn't like each other, and it was like not just a you irritate me kind of not like, it was a you frustrate me so much not like. And I really liked it because the tension between these two was so palpable. And this ended up being a forced proximity situation. So the heroine is forced to move out of her house, and she has like a week or 2 long span where she's gonna be homeless because she moved out of her house, but her new house isn't ready yet. And she is like, hey, best friend, can I stay with you? And her best friend is actually going to be out of town for like a week-long period. And he's like, this is perfect. You can stay in my room while I'm gone. And so she is like, that's good, great. But unfortunately, her best friend is roommates with Tristan, who she does not like. And so, but she is like, I need somewhere to stay. This is what's gonna have to happen. And so she ends up moving in and having to be roommates with Tristan, and Tristan is an MMA fighter. I'm pretty sure his name is Tristan. I might have just made that up. But if it isn't, that would be embarrassing. We're just gonna call him Tristan. I'm pretty sure that's what his name is, and I don't feel like looking it up right now. And the heroine in this book, I really loved, because she is also an MMA fighter. She does not want to be a professional, but she trains at this gym in MMA, and the way that she talks about going and training, I really appreciated. It is fully talking about how strong and confident that fighting MMA makes her feel. She goes to this gym to feel strong, to feel confident, and to feel better. And I really loved that. The focus was not on weight at all. It was fully on her confidence and her strength. I also am a huge fan when sports romances have both athletes. I think that it adds so much to a sports romance when they're both athletes, and so I really liked the way that they connected over their MMA. But this book, with the enemies to lovers, their tension was so good, and I think that that's something that Nikki Castle writes really well. I don't like you, but I also want to rip your clothes off, and I'm either going to punch you in the face or I'm going to kiss you, and you can really feel that buildup, especially in 5 Rounds, and I loved it. Okay, then the next one that we have is Age Gap, and for this one I had to go with the absolute queen, and that is QB Tyler. This book is second semester. I absolutely adored this book. I gave it 5 stars. I am so obsessed and in love with this book. This is the real book that made me want to read more from QB Tyler, and I loved it. So this is a dad's best friend romance. The heroine in this is actually a virgin, and she is going to be a lawyer. She is about to go to law school, and she is interning at her father's law firm, and she ends up working with her father's partner at the law firm and having a relationship with him, and I loved it. It was spicy. It was short and perfect length. Like, I really appreciated how much of a romance and how much of a well-developed story was in such a short book. QB Tyler did an absolutely amazing job. I really loved their relationship together. I could feel the spice in this book, the age gap, the taboo-ness of it. I was 100% here for it and fully obsessed with this, and I'm so happy to be reading more QB Tyler because I really do like her. So if you're looking for something short, sweet, and spicy, read this book. It's fantastic. Then for a historical romance, I had to go with A Reckless Match by Kate Bateman. This one and The Bride Goes Rogue by Joanna Shoup. I was going so back and forth on which one to go with. I was in love with this, still am. It's amazing. It is a rival families romance. Rival families is one of my favorite tropes if you did not know that. And it is fan-freaking-tastic. It is a romance between Madeline Montgomery and Griffin Davies. Madeline is part of the Montgomery family and she really needs money. Her family really needs money. They've very much used up all of their money. And Griffin has become the head of the Davies clan recently. His father has passed away. A long time ago, because of their rivalry, the king or whoever it is declared that on the same day every single year, a member of the Davies family and a member of the Montgomery's family have to come on their neutral land and shake hands on this like little bridge that's in the middle of their territories on the neutral land. And if one member of the clan doesn't show up, then that family forfeits their land to the other family. And so Madeline, because her family's in such financial trouble, she's really, really hoping, because the head of the Davies clan has just died, she's really hoping that they will not show up and that she'll be able to use this land because they want to do an archaeological dig on it and use it to get money. Unfortunately for Madeline, Griffin shows up and he does the handshake and everything, and then Madeline asks him if she can still do this dig on their neutral land, and he like shoots her down, but they end up having to sort of work together. They end up having absolutely amazing banter in this book. It's hilarious because while it is like rival families and while their families do hate each other, they're also neighbors and they did grow up together kind of like playing pranks on each other. And so they know each other really, really well and they very much play off of each other in this rivalry. They have fun with each other and I loved it. It was hilarious and so fun. And they also like uncover this like smuggling plot and it is hilarious and I loved it. So then I picked this one because I wanted to talk about this book, and that is, I picked Omegaverse. I started reading Omegaverse this year. I think this is the first year that I read it. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I ended up really, really loving it, especially White Shoes Omegaverse or Poly Omegaverse. I prefer Omegaverses that are multiple people and not just two people. But I wanted to talk about this book, so I included Omegaverse as the trope, and that is Lola and the Millionaires. So I am a huge fan of Catherine Moon's Sweetverse. It is her Omegaverse series and they are all absolutely fantastic. I think the lowest I gave one of those books is 4 stars. I really enjoyed myself reading that series, and if you're interested in reading Omegaverse, I highly recommend reading Catherine Moon's Sweetverse. It's so fun, so approachable, so easy, especially if you already really like poly romance with a lot of people. Or werewolf romance, which is strange. So if you like the like fated mate aspect of werewolf romance, Omegaverse has a similar idea because Omegaverse is basically like shifters, but they don't shift. But you still have an alpha, beta, omega structure in the society, and omegas still go through like heats and everything, and they get bit by alphas. Like alphas are the dominants for them, and it's just a really fun dynamic and I am a huge fan of it. So I became absolutely obsessed with Catherine Moon's Sweetverse, and Lola and the Millionaires is an absolutely amazing, beautiful story. It is actually a duet within the series. So Lola's story is broken into part 1 and part 2, but this is an amazing story about Lola recovering from some really horrible traumatic events that happened to her during the time of the first book in the series, which is actually Baby and the Late Night Howlers. But Lola goes through really horrible experience, very traumatic experience, and she is now like utterly afraid of men. Her entire life and personality has shifted. There's a time where she's even afraid to leave her house, but she's now started a new job. But again, she is afraid of men. She has a lot of trauma around men and the horrible things that men have done to her. And so she ends up actually being excited, like trying to get herself to be strong enough to go to this new job because it's something that she really wants. And she does, and then unfortunately on one of her like first days, I think there, she ends up actually getting stuck in an elevator with these this group of men. And she is terrified and she has serious PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks. So on page panic attack, trigger warning. But this dealt with it so well. This story between book 1 and book 2 dealt with her recovery so well, so nicely. It went through the like waves of recovery, which I really, really appreciated. It is not always just like you're doing better and then you're better. It's oh, this day is good, but this day is horrible, but these couple of days are good, but this day is also bad. And it's a wave, it's a struggle. It is every single day you're overcoming something where even when you have those panic attacks or things that happen where it goes back to triggering you, your recovery is still an ongoing process. And I really, 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 really loved the way that it was dealt with in this book. I loved this romance. I loved seeing how much the men were willing to do for Lola, and also how much the men were willing to wait and help her and do everything they possibly can to make her feel more comfortable, feel better with them. And I loved it. Loved it. So I had to talk about it in this video. So the last trope that I'm going to mention is RH, or reverse harem, and for that one, the series that I'm going to go with is actually the Hades series by Tate James. So I got into reverse harem this year. I think I said that in this video. I'm bulk filming, so I'm pretty sure I said that in this video and not the last video that I filmed, but I really got into it this year. It's now one of my favorite tropes. Tate James blew my mind a little bit when going into RH books. I was highly addicted to the Madison Kate series, and honestly that one was like the big one that made me so excited to read RH romances. But I think that the Hades series is actually like better written and more well developed than the Madison Kate series. While I do love the Madison Kate series, Hades series is fantastic and I did like it a little bit more. So I did want to mention that just like series because RH was a big trope for me in 2022, so I wanted to have at least one on there, although I guess you could say the Lola and the Millionaires one, but that one is a little different because it's Omegaverse. Anyway, this video is long and me rambling, and it's just me talking about some of my other favorite books that I didn't get to mention in my top 22 of 2022. That's what this video was. Thank you for letting me talk about them. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you get some more recommendations or some more things that you might enjoy reading, or just different insight into what I loved reading in 2022. But that is going to be it for this video. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to that lady on TikTok who I saw do this video. I have no idea who she is or whatever, but full credit to her for the idea of this video. But that is going to be it. So please like this video if you liked it, subscribe and stick around so you can see more content from me, and I hope that you have the absolute best day. Bye.